You may see articles appearing across the Western media about a military recruiting crisis in the United States. Let's take a look at some of the headlines you might be seeing. This is from December 14th, 2023. Amid recruiting woes, active duty end strength to drop again in 2024. And it says the smallest U.S. military force in more than 80 years is about to get even smaller. And why is it getting smaller? Is this planned? Is this deliberate? No, this is a result of failing to meet recruitment quotas. Here is another article trying to explore why the U.S. is struggling to recruit new soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. From The Hill, ideology, not lack of funds, is behind our military's recruiting crisis. Well, it certainly is not a lack of funds. I also don't think that it's ideology. This is an op-ed, and if you go through this, they talk about woke gender theory, politicized vaccine mandates, critical race theory, and they talk about radical politics, and I don't think that that is helping U.S. military. But there is something much deeper at work here that the Western media simply doesn't want to talk about, but it touches upon it in articles like this. From Politico, Americans' confidence in the U.S. military, lowest in 2 decades, poll finds. Only 60% of Americans express a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in the military. This is going down, even though the military is still one of the most trusted institutions in the United States, but public trust is dwindling. Why is that? Is it because of radical politics? No, it's because more and more Americans and more people around the globe are starting to understand that the U.S. military doesn't exist to defend the United States. It's there to advance the political, geopolitical objectives of a very small percentage of special interests running the U.S. and driving U.S. foreign and domestic policy. That is what the U.S. military is. This is nothing new. If you read Smedley Butler's Wars of Racket from right before World War II, you would have seen that this was realized by some people many decades ago. The problem has only gotten worse, but more and more people are becoming aware of it. Hence, a lack of trust and increasing difficulties recruiting people into the U.S. military. Although there are other problems too, such as looking at the newest generation of potential military recruits. These are people who are physically unfit. They're mentally ill in greater and greater numbers. They are addicted to different type of drugs that make them ineligible for military service. They simply do not have the mindset or the physical fitness to serve in the military and perform the tasks necessary in a modern military. I wrote an article recently for China's Global Times about this topic. It was published on the Global Times' application and was also republished here by this Chinese military website. And the title is America's Military Recruitment Crisis, Symptoms of an Overreaching Empire. And I'm going to read this article. I'm going to show you the sources that I cite, and I may throw in some additional information as we go along. So the article begins by saying the United States benefits from a multitude of factors in terms of national security. It is a large nation both in terms of geography and population. It is the 3rd largest population on Earth, as a matter of fact. Its geography also places 2 vast oceans between it and any potential adversary or competitor. There does not exist today a nation with the ability or desire to cross either of these oceans and attack the U.S. homeland. Considering this, the U.S. should, or at least could, enjoy enduring peace spanning decades, if not generations. However, because of Washington and the special interests on Wall Street actually driving U.S. foreign policy, the U.S. has been at almost perpetual war from the end of World War II until today, not in defense of America's homeland, but in pursuit of America's influence and interests abroad, both euphemisms for modern-day empire. And if you read General U.S. Marine Corps General Smedley Butler's War is a Racket, again published just ahead of World War II. He talked about how most of the wars leading up to World War II were also wars of opportunity, wars of choice, not being fought in defense of the United States, but in pursuit of special interests and their exploitation of people and resources beyond their own borders. Like all empires before it, the U.S. finds itself facing a dilemma. It either continues expanding to maintain and grow its wealth and power globally, or this international wealth and power will crumble. Like empires all throughout history, the necessity to fill the ranks of its military, one of the primary tools used to secure and expand U.S. wealth and power worldwide, is paramount. And like all other empires throughout history, the U.S. has found itself growing increasingly desperate to do so. In recent years, America has faced a growing recruitment crisis in which various services of the United States' armed forces are unable to meet recruitment quotas and, as a result, are diminishing in both quantity and quality. The U.S. Army, for example, has shrunk by over 30,000 personnel from 2021 because of its inability to meet recruitment quotas. The U.S. media has begun discussing this problem, admitting that the U.S. armed forces are missing quotas for a variety of reasons, including a growing percentage of the American population unable to meet health and fitness requirements, or because of drug addiction, criminal records, I forgot about that one, and mental health issues, or a general disinterest or even distrust of the U.S. armed forces following decades of wars predicated on dubious pretexts. That last point right there is one the Western media is trying to avoid discussing. So they will talk about everything else, and they will leave out the fact that the U.S. has not fought a justified war in decades. People joining the military today, in recent history, they cannot see an example of a war the U.S. has fought that was actually justifiable. To fill these gaps, the U.S. has gradually reduced standards for entry into the U.S. military, as well as expanded the scope of who can join to include even those who are not even American citizens. So I joined the U.S. Marine Corps in the year 2000, right out of high school. I was 17 years old. I joined the U.S. military, and at that time, they were already allowing non-U.S. citizens to join. They were legal immigrants into the United States. Joining the military was a fast track toward citizenship. Now, as I'm going to discuss in this article, they're considering allowing illegal immigrants into the military, and their service would be in exchange for a fast track towards U.S. citizenship. For years, the United States has allowed legal immigrants to serve in the U.S. military as a fast track toward U.S. citizenship, not unlike the Roman Empire of centuries ago. Most recent talk has begun about recruiting even from among illegal immigrants. So I'm going to talk about this right here. This is from Dick Durbin, United States Senator of Illinois. This is from December 4th. Durbin to Republicans, work with Democrats to fix our broken immigration system. A press release from the office of Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin concerning ideas to fix what was called a broken immigration system included mention of military recruiting from among illegal immigrants. The press release would say, "Do you know what the recruiting numbers are at the Army, Navy, and the Air Force? They can't reach their quotas each month. They can't find enough people to join our military forces. And there are those who are undocumented who want the chance to serve and risk their lives for this country. Should we give them a chance? I think we should." Senator Durbin also mentioned a lack of qualified human resources within the United States itself, which he hoped to address by likewise recruiting talent from around the globe. There was no introspection as to how the U.S. arrived at this crisis in the first place, both for its military and its domestic workforce, and thus there is little hope of U.S. leadership ever genuinely resolving it. So what they're trying to do is just paper over these problems. They cannot meet their quotas. They will not ask genuine questions as to why. Instead, they will find these short-term stopgaps to fix the problem. But that only guarantees that the problem continues to grow toward a point in the future where even these stopgaps won't work anymore. This is exactly what happened to the Roman Empire. The U.S. has plenty of human beings living within its borders. The problem is American society, or lack thereof. It suffers from a general unraveling of family values, work ethics, and general social cohesion. There's also the collapse of America's education system, including vocational education, creating a dearth of qualified candidates for all activity, economic or military. You have people coming out of high school who could just barely read, write, and do basic arithmetic, let alone any sort of trade that would be useful in the economy or for the military. Rather than understand and address this problem at its roots, the U.S. appears intent on papering over it. Instead of creating a sustainable foreign policy that allowed more resources to be spent at home on education and infrastructure, the U.S. continues pursuing its overreaching maximalist policies overseas, encroaching upon, encircling, and even attempting to contain both Russia and China. So this policy of investing in the U.S. at home, this would address the growing shortage of qualified candidates for both the economy and the military. And this latter policy ensures this problem will only continue to grow. The mindset in Washington that makes the pursuit of modern empire such an urgent imperative is also the same mindset incapable of understanding and solving the problems this pursuit of empire always inevitably creates. It is a mindset unable to admit the unsustainability of empire and the military and economic requirements needed to continue pursuing it. The desperate search to fill the ranks of a military deployed across the planet among hundreds of bases dotting scores of nations and involved in interventions on virtually every inhabited continent consumes Washington to the extent that no one in the White House or Congress ever stops to think if they should continue doing so in the first place. The induction of immigrants into the U.S. military may temporarily delay America's many and multiplying problems, but it will not make the pursuit of empire any more sustainable in the long run. The sooner Washington understands that what it is trying to do cannot and should not be done, the sooner it can solve all the problems created by trying to do so anyway. And that is the end of the article. And I think there's little more that needs to be said. What more needs to be said about this problem? The U.S. is a modern day empire. It is pursuing unsustainable foreign policy of perpetual expansion, and also an attempt to encircle and contain re-emerging Russia and a rising China. It's doing so with resources that don't exist and will never exist, including human resources. And half the problem is not that there aren't enough people, but there just aren't enough people who the U.S. has invested in to give the skills necessary for the economic and military competition the U.S. is trying to engage in. And if you look at this U.S. recruiting problem, military recruiting problem, it's very similar to the U.S. military industrial base problem. The fact that the military industrial base in the United States is purely for profit. They will not sacrifice the potential to make profits to actually create enough of the weapon systems and ammunition needed to win the type of wars that they are trying to fight right now on the global stage. So we're going to see many problems like this. These problems are going to just simply multiply. Attempts to paper over these problems are maybe going to buy some time, but not much. And ultimately, papering over it instead of trying to understand it at its roots is going to compound the problem. And as I've said many, many times regarding many different issues, U.S. political interference, wars of aggression, proxy wars, until the U.S. rethinks its foreign policy, And until it understands it needs to work with all other nations on Earth rather than attempt to impose itself upon all other nations on Earth, this unsustainable policy is only going to create more and more problems. Only time will tell if the US finally realizes that it must work with all other nations rather than attempt to impose itself on all other nations, take the resources that it's wasting attempting to do the latter so that it can start working on the former. It can begin reinvesting inside the United States on industry, on infrastructure, on real genuine education. And a lot of the radical politics that they were talking about, these aren't things that people actually honestly believe in. These are wedge issues that the system is using to divide and distract the population so that they can keep pushing this policy, this foreign and domestic policy that does not actually benefit the people. The people are going to see the policy and understand that it doesn't benefit them. But if you throw a bunch of wedge issues at them and get them chasing their tails over that, they won't talk about the foreign and domestic policies that are actually important. And so you can see how every aspect of trying to perpetuate modern US empire is actually the biggest enemy and obstacle of the United States at this point. So that's the video. If you thought it was useful, please like and share. Think about subscribing. It's free to do. It helps the channel grow. Check the video description below for other places you can find it, follow my work. Check the video description below for the link to this article that I wrote, along with the other articles that I cited in this video. Also in the video description below are ways you can help support my work. I do not monetize my YouTube channel or any of my social media platforms. If ads pop up, feel free to skip them. They're not doing me any good at all. If you do want to support my work, please do so through Buy Me a Coffee and also through Patreon. To everyone who has been, thank you so much. That is what makes this work possible, whether it's a one-time donation, donations month to month, or even if you're just sharing my work with others. All of that helps. It's greatly appreciated. So again, thank you. And as always, thank you for watching.